Welcome to Tribal Talks, a show where we pull back the curtain on why enterprise systems feel slow, complex, and hard to change, and discuss how Tribal is rewriting that story. I'm your host, Rebecca McKenzie, and together with our guests, we break down the metadata, the technology, and the people behind the agentic enterprise. Today, we're diving into one of the most misunderstood and most powerful concepts in enterprise systems, metadata, and specifically Tribal's metadata fabric. To break it down, I'm joined by Uri Pintov, VP of Product at Tribal. Uri has been shaping how enterprises understand and evolve their systems for over 20 years, and he's here to explain what the Tribal metadata fabric is and why it's pivotal to your AI readiness strategy. Uri, thanks for joining me today.
Happy to be here, Rebecca.
I'm super excited to dive into this conversation. And I want to start with the problem that you're solving because it affects every CIO, even if they don't always realize that it's their root cause of the problems that they're having. So can you break down for me, why is metadata the biggest hidden blocker inside enterprise systems today?
Sure. I think it starts really when you speak to many CIOs and the head of IT departments. As soon as they get into their new position, you immediately find out that they don't really understand how many of the critical systems that they have really work behind the scenes. And if they make a change, what is that going to impact? And so much goes on into just learning and onboarding and understanding how everything works. But they have a kind of a goal to make impact fast. Really, if you're a CIO or a leader that's going to drive change and innovate and do things like AI transformation projects, if you don't really understand how the current systems work, you're kind of lost. And it's one of the key reasons AI projects fail. So I would say that's kind of the number one reason why getting a hold of how your existing systems work is so important. And what we call metadata and metadata fabric in Tribal terms is really all about understanding how the current systems work, letting AI tools, AI agents understand that and explain it to you so you can make changes responsibly and fast and accurate and impact.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thanks for breaking that down. And, when you're talking about metadata fabric, how would you explain it in sort of the simplest terms possible?
I think the simplest way to look at it is think of a platform that connects to one of your critical systems. And the first thing it does is it ingests everything about that system. It studies and maps out all of the metadata. So metadata is anything from what is a field to a code that is written to a UI that is shown to a user, all these things that are around the data, that describe the data, that explain to us how the data behaves. And basically it kind of maps and writes the story of what exists and how does it work. One of the most important things is it documents the relationships between the different metadata types. So if you touch this, you're also impacting that. And that is true within one critical system, but it's also true across systems with integrations, which is one of the biggest headaches that CIOs and IT systems face today. After you do that mapping and documentation, only now you're able to ask questions and plan changes and start new projects and show the user what happens to the process. And you have to take that into consideration, especially if you make a big change in, like the sales process or a service process or anything that has to do with marketing, finance, these critical processes that your business runs on a daily basis. And it also includes the documentation of the architecture and how the integration works across your systems so that you can build on top of that. And when you make decisions, you take that into consideration.
Okay, that was really helpful. So what I'm hearing is metadata maps your system so you have a view of the systems and then it documents it. So it's telling you actually what is happening and if you make a change, what's going to happen after that.
Exactly right.
Okay, very, very helpful. Thank you. And so what makes Tribal's metadata fabric different from a traditional org analysis or traditional impact analysis tools?
Yeah, I think there have been tools like this for a long time. They come in, they scan your system, they do kind of a one-time analysis. Some of them are for drive marketing, and I think the key difference between that and what we're doing is it's not a one-time thing. It's not something that you run an analysis, you get action items, you assign them to someone, and yeah, that works great for cybersecurity threats, penetration testing. I think here it's a much deeper need, and the deep need here is you plug into the systems and you map the metadata, and from that point it lives and breathes all the changes. So it's not kind of a one-time thing of you need to fix, you have a security hole. It's a continuous refreshing and updating and documenting, and whether the change to the platform has been done by a third party solution implementer or your Salesforce admin or anybody in your organization that made a change that maybe you don't even know about, installed a new application that touches data. From that moment on, it's tracked and it's documented. And the next time you're going to try and start a new project in that area, it's going to know. And the tribal is going to tell you, this is the change and this is the impact. Is this the way you want to build it? Or do you want to build it the other way? It also will be documented and included in the test plan. So whatever you are building, you can test it and see that it doesn't impact the existing applications. Yeah, so I think it's kind of this continuous learning, documenting cycle that's plugged in that I think all companies will end up having across all of their critical systems. I just don't see a future where you can responsibly and accurately move fast without breaking things if you don't have something like that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So a lot of traditional tools will tell you what's happening in the moment, but if you make a change in 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years, it doesn't help you anymore. Whereas Tribal is almost alive, it's living, it's always
Exactly
recording the
right.
changes that are happening. Okay, that makes a big difference. And you mentioned earlier about how CIOs are really struggling to get their businesses kind of ready, really ready for AI. And so why is this metadata intelligence kind of the foundation? Why do you believe it's the foundation for real AI readiness?
Yeah, I think many of the AI transformation projects that we see, they start with AI readiness assessment. And if you look at the successful AI projects, there are successful AI projects out there and transformations. What you see that they got right was two key elements. The first one is the data, and data that comes from many systems. If it's garbage data or old data, no matter what you do, even if you know exactly what you're doing, you're going to run into trouble. So obviously, taking care of the data and surfacing things like data duplication, data integrity issues, that's kind of a non-starter. But after that, I think it all has to do with metadata. And metadata really needs to allow humans, but also the agents to work with the data in the correct way, explain how it works, the logic behind it, and the impact that changes can have. So I think without both of these, AI agents don't really know what they're doing, and you can demo amazing things with AI agents, but they won't know if they're headed in the right direction. And it's a huge difference between demoing an agent that works and really putting it in production in front of real users, whether that's internal users in your company, or especially if it's external users, your customers, you're letting them interact. It's essential to have kind of guardrails for the agents. And if you think about the metadata, it's kind of a guardrail for the agent to know what it's touching, what it's doing without hurting or just doing things that you don't want it to do. So those are the two key elements that I see.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really important there as well, which is like, what do you see in a demo versus what do you see in reality? And why having that view of your metadata is so important to actually deliver a successful AI project. Because we know like 80% of them fail.
Yeah.
So delivering a successful one is difficult. But if you have this view of your metadata, then you can do it. And so let's talk about some successes. We mentioned, 80% of projects fail, but of course, tribal customers have a lot of successes. So can you share What's a real example of where metadata fabric has revealed something surprising or has unlocked speed or innovation that wasn't possible before?
Sure, happy to. I think it starts with the little things. You see some users, even admins, even non-technical users, start to ask on a daily basis simple questions like, what does this field do? What does this flow do? How did this process work? What happens if I add something here? Why does this user not able to access that? And simple things that administrators run into every day, they kind of smile, and the more experienced one are like, sure, I know the reason, and they go solve it immediately. But on a larger scale, given that access beyond admins, anyone who wants to drive change, especially analysts, architects, even developers, when they want to drive a change and they don't know the 20 years history of things that were deployed to this specific system, it's a game changer for them. And not just ask a question, but kind of build a whole group of components, artifacts that is really the context. If you think about when you plan a project or a change, even if it's a small one, you basically are, before you make the change, you are kind of collecting the context that is relevant to make the change. So you're learning how things work, and you're understanding which key elements are going to be impacted, which users are going to be impacted. All that is happening in your head without you even realizing. I think that's kind of the key surprise slash value that we see from our early users, is that they get that context, they collect it together, and then they go and make the change with the context that they learned. And that's a very accurate and responsible thing to do, because then there's much less surprises when you really are making the change, and you kind of take what you need to take into consideration. It also has to do with documentation. We see that users combine the ability of the metadata fabric to answer questions about real components, plus documentation and knowledge that exists about their architecture, about the integration systems. Both of these are super powerful in helping to make decisions. So that's on one end of the spectrum. I think on the other side is we see users create incredible applications that are super complex. So I'm talking, not just a object model and kind of a security layer, and really a logic layer that powers real logic and UI and experience for the user that is a human being, like the sales rep or the customer success manager, but also available for agents, with the invocable actions for agents to use the application. And for me, I think the biggest surprise is the complexity and logic of things like, how to route leads smartly to your partners. That's a very difficult problem to solve. And I think with the right context and existing metadata, we see people creating applications that are really amazing in the way they look, the way they perform, the complexity of the logic. So I think that's been super exciting to see our customers building.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting. It sounds like Tribal is really delivering on two fronts, being able to give enterprises this view into their metadata so they can clear their backlogs, move faster. And when you have all of that ready, then you're able to build these amazing integrated applications. And I guess they're kind of living applications, right? If they're built on this metadata.
Absolutely. I think a key change that's happening across is that the app, everything that the change that you make or the app that you deployed is connected. It's kind of it in itself has changed the way a process works. It changed the metadata. It's recorded. It's documented. So just like you said, it's kind of living and breathing and evolving with the business. And even if you come back to it 5 years from now, you will know the exact state, because it's always documented, and any change is immediately added to the metadata fabric layer. And I think that's the key change that we are going to see with many, many systems, either manual. We're going to see people manually documenting systems and tracking, and we're going to see it but done automated with agents. And I think it's exciting. Both of them are important. And it's exciting because then really systems become much smarter, and agents are really able to use them and fulfill the potential.
Yeah, and it sounds like this metadata fabric is kind of the integral part to enabling continuous evolution and not just delivering one-off app
Exactly.
delivery. Ori, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like I've learned so much. Thank you so much for joining me. It's super rare to talk about something as technical as metadata and walk away thinking like, this actually explains to me why everything is so hard. But more importantly, I think what you cleared up is that it doesn't have to be hard. You just need the right tools, and Tribal is definitely one of those tools.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. If you want to dive deeper into Tribal's approach, you can learn more at gotribal.ai. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Tribal Talks.